Hello folks and welcome to Gotham City Knights. This video will be another Batman Miniatures Game 3rd Edition Battle Report. This is our 6th Battle Report for the channel, and once again due to COVID-19 has been played on Tabletop Simulator. Although we will look to play an actual in-person game as the restrictions ease in North Ireland in the next couple of weeks. We here at Gotham City Knights seek to not just show you how our games play out, but also give you insight to our strategic and tactical thinking throughout the game. My name is Kaiwas, and my opponent today, as always, is Salandra. And today we took a different approach to crew selection. We actually used a Wheel of Fortune randomization and came up that I would be playing League of Assassins and my opponent Salandra would be playing her favourite, Teen Titans. We tried to take two different approaches to both lists than we've actually played before, as these are both crews that have appeared on the channel before. And we'll dive into the crews to show you exactly what we've done differently. If you've stumbled across this video and you don't actually know how to play Batman Miniatures Game 3rd Edition, or you're a returning player to the game, before you dive into this video you can check out our How to Play series that's found on our channel. There's also lots of other content including miniature spotlights, moments of glory, and tactical thinking in the Lightning Reflex series. So let's take a look at Salandra's Teen Titans list first. Teen Titans featured in our first video on the channel all those weeks ago, and as we explained then, I'll really explain it now, they are a team within the rules, not a crew specifically. Teams are described on Knight Model's team document, and all have different ways to recruit miniatures than a normal crew would. Different benefits and different bonuses for each. In this case, with Titans, you get an extra 30 reputation for every 2 miniatures recruited to the crew. In this case, Salandra has 6 miniatures, so actually has a budget of 440 reputation points, which gives her a lot more room to put a lot more capes in the list. The normal downside to a Titans list is that it brings inexperience points, which effectively allow your opponent to reduce your effectiveness with certain specific roles in a turn. But Salandra has warded off this because that's reduced by bringing enough leaders and sidekicks. So in this case, she actually has 0 inexperience points. So the crew is headed up by Dick Grayson Robin, the one from the Teen Titans box set. He replaces her last boss in this list, in Titans list, of the Nightwing Dick Grayson. A little bit cheaper, has different types of tools, and she's equipped him with handcuffs in order to do some arresting because this team likes to do a lot of stun damage. So with the rest of the points that she's freed up, here is the rest of the crew. We have the cross-faction Damian Wayne Robin, again with handcuffs. He does a lot of stun damage in any good guy crews with his combo katanas, and is fairly hardy even though he only has 5 endurance and 5 willpower. You've got the third Robin of the crew, Jason Todd. This one is an interesting one because he's actually really good in the rules currently as they're written with his batarangs, because the impetuous rule allows him to throw extra batarangs at people who are actually closer to him at the start of his activation. So that's through the impetuous rule. So Salandra has smartly equipped him with another round of batarangs with a magazine. We have Wonder Girl. Wonder Girl is just the big beat stick in this list. Very scary. 2 types of weapons, can do blood or stun, can mind control people, can super jump. Lots of flexibility. Always worth an audacity every turn. And then other than the different Robins that are in the crew, this is the big change to Salandra's approach this time around. She has taken the Oracle miniature, which is a very suspect-driven miniature. Obviously in the wheelchair behind the computer screens. It's one of the Intel support folks. And then she has taken Goliath as effectively, as you'll see it play out, as Oracle's taxi around the board to keep Oracle moving around and placing suspects in places, and then just allowing that flexibility. And then also has the ability to get back in the fight later in the game and help others move around in unexpected ways. So over to Salandra's objective deck. In this case, the objective deck is built with as much flexibility as possible, and that's really backed up by the fact again that teams can take objective cards from every affiliation that sits within the crew, up to a maximum of 6 cards per character. So because Damian has a League of Assassins affiliation, Salandra was allowed to take, well, in this case, 5 cards from that faction. And obviously everyone else has a Batman affiliation, so there's a lot of Batman cards in here. The composition of the deck has been put together in such a way to take out, I suppose, where possible, my influence on Salandra's scoring. So you've got a lot to do with where she can place suspect markers and use them to score with the likes of Snitch and secure the perimeter. Die Hard, which is a very easy score regardless, just to keep someone alive. Valuable commodities, use one of your own suspects. And then sprinkling in a little bit of interaction with me whenever it does come down to that bit with Get Them Off the Streets, which is very, very nice 3-point card which can be scored off all that stun damage the crew does, and they come through everything if any of my suspects do wander into her path. You'll see this is a 21 card deck because we do have one character card, the only one available to Titans I believe at the minute, which is the Netmaster card, which is Oracle's character card, all about controlling where the suspects are around Oracle at the right time. So over to the League of Assassins now on my own crew. I would usually take the Talia that Salandra featured in the first video that we did with League of Assassins, all the way back when it faced off against Batwoman, which is the Talia Rebirth one, the sort of 101 point-ish one. But I thought, you know what, let's try out a sidekick alongside. So I took the cheapest Talia available, Miranda Tate, which is the one from the Dark Knight Rises box. She has a lot of the tricks that all the Talias have, the scheming, extra funding, that sort of thing. And because she's so cheap, she allows me to bring along a sidekick. In this case, I took Lady Shiva. Lady Shiva is probably underplayed because there's a main reason for that, which is the arrogant rule, which means she rolls less attack dice whenever she's attacking miniatures that are lower reputation than her. I had banked on Salandra having at least 2 miniatures over 80 points, but not to be the case. So Lady Shiva was probably going to have to put a lot of work in to actually knock these other people out. But she does come with combo unarmed, which is really, really nasty whenever she gets hits through that you just can't block all of them. Henchman wise, the 2 standouts here are Damian Wayne, again mirror Damian Wayne on both sides. This one specifically with combat braces, which allows him to reroll defense in combat, which I've seen so many times be so helpful. And Ubu, the big bodyguard, just there to keep, I suppose, slightly squishier Miranda Tate and Lady Shiva up whenever they do get any incoming fire. The only other change I saw was with the bow acolyte, the one with the hawk. Took that because I was intrigued about how I could use my own suspects to sort of keep Salandra at bay and didn't need to draw line of sight or worry about cover. So it will be interesting to see how that plays out. So over to my objective deck. I will admit I didn't actually play around with this very much since the last time I played League of Assassins, so it wasn't teched specifically to play either against Teen Titans or to play against the way that Salandra plays Teen Titans. So very suspect driven, very sort of end of turn driven as well, because I've got 3 copies of Do Not Deviate from the plan, which gets scored in phase 4, as well as Eradicate the Order, all to do with suspects be winning that game. Multiple Threats is a great 3-pointer for the league. Recently updated to be even better because you can now play it on your opponent's turn. So that was the errata that Knight put out recently. Then no other really big exciting things in there other than the 3 character cards. The one I want to look at, because we haven't seen it before, is the Master's Jewel card from Lady Shiva. The scoring on it is fine. Friendly model makes an enemy model with a higher reputation cost suffer knockout. So, I mean, very easy for her to do that. Probably not so easy for the rest of my crew because they don't have a lot of stun damage. But it's the second part which I want to pay close attention to, is the when resolving an attack performed by a model with the alias Lady Shiva, change all stun markers inflicted to blood markers. So Lady Shiva can go from a knockout boxer all of a sudden to a straight killer by just 1 resource point. So here we are on the table itself, and we'll take a look at the deployment type and event type that we drew. So we drew the Taking Sides one, which is where there is basically almost impassable wall up the middle of the table, and we deploy on either side of it, basically growling at each other from both sides of this. I'm not even going to say peace wall, but impassable terrain, but actually not capable of actually getting to each other until we move up the table. The only thing I will say is that anything that is a place, so the likes of sewers or Wonder Girl's super jump, actually does allow you to pass through that wall. The event in this case was the suspect exhaustion, and this was going to matter quite a bit. When a model places a suspect marker and there are already 3 or more suspect markers in play, the model suffers the slow 2 effect. So both crews here heavy on the suspect game, as we saw on the objective deck, so that was going to slow the advance even more, meaning that it would be very difficult to get around that 18-inch mark, for at least for the League of Assassins, in 2 turns. So I decided, as the player who won the roll-off, to place first, to give myself the chance to deploy first as well, and choose the side I wanted. You can see the sewers are fairly evenly placed out, except for one denied on a rooftop. There are 2 lights on a rooftop, both placed by Solandra because she didn't like the look of all the guns that I was bringing. I tried to cover some other zones with the light before we chose deployment, but probably not going to matter the way that the deployment came out, and we're going to have to meet in the middle of the board. In terms of my own deployment, I decided to use as much undercover and hidden as possible. You see Talia is sort of sitting, inspiring everybody. I didn't push too far forward because with Titans, the worst thing you can do is just get picked off one by one. So I tried to keep it as a bunch and threaten as much as possible as a bunch, because I wasn't going to be able to do enough one by one. Solandra probably would have preferred my side of the board because there is more openness for placing suspects in the early game, but she had to make do with the right hand side of the board, bunching up again around the leader who was going to pass out the inspires for the first turn. Here we are at the end of the raise the plan phase. Solandra won the roll off in the take the lead phase and actually passed initiative to me. Usually does that so that she can have a better chance to get initiative on the second round. In that case, she played Die Hard out. I believe it was on Wonder Girl, so that she doesn't get killed or knocked out by the end of the round. Score that, and then the Netmaster card was played out in this case on Oracle. Audacity placed out on Wonder Girl, Oracle, Robin, and Goliath, probably setting up for some sort of taxi ride up the board. Over on the league side, I have given Audacity to the 2 league acolytes, Damian Wayne and Lady Shiva, leaving it off Talia because this Talia doesn't really do much else. She doesn't have a special action or any real reason to be trying to run into the opponent too quickly. She's there to inspire other people and keep the crew efficient as they move. First up for the League of Assassins is actually the unaffiliated gentleman, Gustav, the prisoner with the carbine. He's a henchman, so he took inspire from Talia, moved his fully 8 inches up the board, placed down a suspect, and both crews at this point actually took the opportunity to commit to the We Cannot Be Defeated objective card, which can be committed to at any time during phase 3, so either on your or your opponent's activation. That'll score at the end of the round if there are at least 3 friendly suspects within 6 inches of each other. And then I also tried to continue cycling through my hand by playing out the Overdrive card as a resource, which allowed me to drop a Venom dose beside the suspect I had just placed. Dick Grayson was first to activate for the Teen Titans. You can see that he actually didn't move at all, used his detective ability just to place out a suspect 3 inches in front of him. This was trying to be as efficient as possible on Solandra's side to get all the suspects out and get up to that max and beat me in that first turn suspect race. So Dick really just there on this turn to inspire everyone else in the crew. At this point, I took the assassin who was deployed further up the field with his equipment to activate next to get that 3rd suspect down before the suspect exhaustion of the event took its toll. So he moved basically almost as far east as possible to get close to that middle wall that you can see marked with the red line, and placed the suspect out with the free inspire that he took from Talia. This suspect was within 4 inches of the suspect that Salandra had placed with Dick, and that allowed me to score the under their noses card, which is a friendly model places a suspect within 4 inches of an enemy suspect for 2 points, and keeps cycling through my hand. I then also played the Valuable Commodities Resource, which has been updated recently by Night in an errata, which allowed me to draw 3 cards and sort of reform my hand with different cards. As you can see, leaving myself with the hand at the minute. Next up was the Teen Titans good guy version of Damian Wayne, Little Robin. He has the detective rules, and because he had an audacity this turn, he was able to use his Inspire first to detective out a suspect 2 inches in front of him, just outside of the deployment zone, which turned into a snitch. Then used his movement to move up the board and place yet another suspect just beside the fountain with his own tactical action. As you can see, he now has the slowed effect, which means he won't have as much range next turn. On the other side, the League of Assassins committed to yet another We Cannot Be Defeated in order to cycle. Now, you can't score both of these in a turn because they're both checked at the end of the turn, but it allowed me to play it to get out of my hand to keep rolling. I also used the Eradicate the Order resource on the first assassin to make him immune to the smoke rule. Again, just to get it out of my hand and keep cycling through. So over to the League of Assassins for the next activation. This time it was Ubu the bodyguard. So again, wary of making sure that the entire crew moves as a pack, but also getting the most suspects out. I decided to move Ubu up, make a bit of space by picking up the Venom Dose. Didn't really want to place out a suspect with him because I needed him to keep moving up the board as far as possible. But I was able to cycle through a card by playing the Die Hard card out as a resource, placing the Wayne Tech marker in contact that had been placed furthest forward. The Wayne Tech marker, once turned on, actually stops special actions basically being used on my guys, or any guys in fact. So it helped, or hopefully it would help you get for any sort of negative effects that Salandra might have. Teen Titans took Goliath next, and this is a fun one. Salandra had obviously taken 3 copies of Secure the Perimeter in her deck and needed to get suspects out on the perimeter. A little bit confined because of the big building right there. So she took Goliath and activated his flying trait, or fly trait. Then also carried one of her miniatures, in this case Jason Todd, over to the right hand side of the board, dropping him just behind her, and also then using her own tactical action to place out a suspect. So setting that up that at some point in the rest of the turn, Jason Todd will be able to put out a suspect himself and get 2 in the right place for that Secure the Perimeter card. The next up was the other Damien, the one on the League of Assassins side. So because again he started with Audacity and Inspire from Talia, he was able to actually use his detective ability twice to place out 2 suspects within 3 inches, but also obviously the legal 2 inches from his own deployment zone. So you can see them there just far enough away from each other and the rest to set up hopefully that We Cannot Be Defeated to score. He then just moved up the board to keep the crew together. He didn't want to use his backclaw at this stage to overextend. And I believe Salandra at this point also committed to her second copy of We Cannot Be Defeated just to continue to cycle through her cards. Next up, the last of the Robins on the board across both crews to activate was Jason Todd. Jason Todd was, as we saw, carried to this spot by Goliath, so he had impaired movement, meaning he had -4 movement, and he didn't have an Audacity. So all he did was move just to the other side of Goliath, where you can see him, and then use the free manipulate that he gets from his handyman trait in order to place down a second suspect on that perimeter. Quickly just now, Acolyte 2, the Knife Acolyte, just moved up and placed a suspect on top of the bonnet of the car, measuring out that should be in place to score the We Cannot Be Defeated at the end of the turn. Next up is Inspired and Audacious Wonder Girl. Salandra always likes to get the maximum amount of suspects out as soon as possible, and this is helped by Wonder Girl's ability to move, place a suspect with her Inspire, and then super jump with her special action, then use the actual tactical action to place another suspect. So as you can see, they're all lined up against that wall, and placing Wonder Girl at an advanced position, sort of putting a bit of a threat on anything that I would want to bring up the table and leave a little bit exposed. And as you can see, there's also quite a lot of crossover in how close those suspects are, which should allow Salandra to hopefully score the "We Cannot Be Defeated" card herself at the end of the round. Simple one for me here. Talia, the boss of the crew, now that all her henchmen had moved out of the original deployment zone, was free to move up the board. I didn't have any audacity on her, so this was just about getting the bubble moving towards the right spot on the board. Next up was Oracle, activating for the Titans, last in the Titans crew or team. Oracle moved up the board just alongside the building, just behind Damien. Used her hacking special ability to move some suspects around, dragging the snitch towards the board edge, dragging others into position to help guarantee that "We Cannot Be Defeated" card that she played out. She also then played the multiple threats objective card, which used to have to be played at the start of a friendly activation, but on inspection it had gained quite a good bit of use now that it actually doesn't have that requirement any longer. We would have put out the numerical counters, the 6 numerical counters you're supposed to put out, but we chose not to, just for keeping the board tidy, because there was no way that the League of Assassins were going to remove any of the suspects on the other side of that wall before the end of the round. You'll note that Oracle has also made it very abundantly clear that she's going to score that character card this turn, as she was able to hack those suspects around her to get that right formation of 6 suspects being within 8 inches of her. Now for my sidekick, Lady Shiva, I had chosen with her adaptable rule in the Raise the Plan phase that she was going to get +2 movement this turn. So her base move of 10 plus her acrobat 1 inch plus the extra 2 meant that she was able to make it up to where you can see her using a bit of verticality of the map to space out those suspects for me. So popped down a suspect on top of there, and then I actually played out the multiple threats card because I had 6 suspects out at this point of time. Last on my side is the Acolyte 3, who is the Bow Acolyte, the one who has the falconry trait. I'd been holding off on this activation all round to see if Salandra would leave me a juicy target within 6 inches of any of my suspects. Unfortunately, it wasn't to be the case, so I chose not to use the falconry trait, which allows me to basically shoot someone from far off without being able to see them and ignore cover. So I just continued to create a sort of forward fire base, bringing him up beside Talia. So here we are in phase 4. I, on the League of Assassins side as the first player, was able to score the Do Not Deviate from the Plan card because none of my suspects had been removed this turn, and I had played at least one. The multiple threats again was an auto score because I had 6 suspects out and none were removed. We Cannot Be Defeated, 1 copy of it scored and 1 got discarded, as we discussed, because it was in the right sort of formation, and I'd already scored the Under Their Noses card earlier in the round. So now we look at the Bonanza side, the Teen Titan side, I mean. Lots of points scored over here. The We Cannot Be Defeated, that was, as I said, 2 copies played out, 1 discarded and 1 scored, because you can't score 2 at the same time. Die Hard scored because no one got scratched this turn at all, never mind Wonder Girl, who was the one it was played on. Netmaster, Oracle was within that 8-inch radius of those suspects around her. Multiple Threats was an auto score. Snitch was never going to get contested. The Secure the Perimeter of the 2 suspects dropped on the east of the board. Again, another auto score, lifting them off, giving Salandra a huge 15 points out of the first turn. Here we are once again at the end of the Raise the Plan phase in round 2. Salandra did win the roll-off with all those passes to add to a roll in the first phase, but passed the initiative to myself in order to allow me to sort of commit to something before she could take advantage of what was coming. And obviously has those arrest cards available and all of those removing suspects cards that she wants to use at some point. So I popped out actually Audacity on the same 4 this turn as I did last turn. The Bow Acolyte, the Knife Acolyte, Damian Wayne and Lady Shiva on top of that building. Over on the Titan side, you can see that the Audacity has tightened to the people, to the folks who are closest to the wall and probably going to affect the fight. leaving Jason Todd and Goliath to keep dropping the suspects on the eastern front. Jason Todd will probably come and join the fight because he does have Handyman, but he'll be able to drop that before he goes. So, just to remind you, we did do our schemings for both Salandra's 3 scheming that she gets through Oracle and the 3 schemings that I get through Talia, so that's why the suspects have moved around ever so slightly. I was trying to stop Salandra scoring easy secured the perimeters and also putting them beside miniatures so that she couldn't immediately drop another one, whereas she was trying to free up space to allow sort of continued dropping of all 8 suspects. First up, I activated Gustav. Gustav, again, the first guy to go, takes his movement and then the free inspire that he takes from Talia, not to place a suspect in this case, but actually to use the Wayne marker, activating it and effectively giving a 4-inch radius in which special actions can't be performed, nor my guys can be targets of special actions. And that may sound niche or corner case, but with the amount of arrest in this list, I thought it very, very useful to maybe save me an early turn removal of a miniature. Oracle is next up on the Titan side, first to activate this time instead of last round. Had an audacity, was right beside a suspect marker, which she actually removed, reducing the good guys down to 5 suspects. This was quickly remediated, placing a snitch right back down beside it in order to keep that point train running. She then used her hacking ability to move the sewer marker up the board and the snitch the other way. That was so that I couldn't cancel the snitch with a smart sewer movement later in the turn. Then moved over right to beside where you can see her, then beside the fountain again for use of that hacking later in the game. The League of Assassins played out the multiple threats card. As you can see, the dice are all down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 on the suspects that were placed out at this point. Next up was Ubu, and just to actually go back a little to explain the multiple threats going out this early in the round. My hand was pretty jammed up with cards that were going to be difficult to score, or at least guaranteed to score, so I got it out as a risk that I would probably maybe only lose one of those suspects in the upcoming round, and still hopefully have that 5 out of 6 chance of scoring it. I also actually cycled through the Eradicate the Order card to make, I believe, Ubu immune to smoke. This wasn't for any particular reason other than the fact that I knew that Salandra had a stronger suspect game going than me, so I wasn't going to be able to score Eradicate the Order and I needed to shuffle through. Ubu himself, once again, didn't have an audacity, so all he could do was move forward and manipulate, in this case placing a suspect down right across the border from Donna and the one of the good guy suspects, allowing him to score under their noses this activation. Salandra used my activation to play out the We Cannot Be Defeated objective card, pretty much already guaranteed from the placement of the suspects in the previous turn. Next up was Goliath on the Titan side. No audacity in sight, no inspire in sight, so he just uses one action to drop a suspect right beside him. And at this point, Salandra was looking at her hand in the same way I was, thinking that she needed to cycle through. So she played her multiple threats out. You can see the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 placed on the suspects that are furthest away from me, leaving one which I might be able to get at, but probably nothing deeper than that. Allowing her hopefully to score those 3 points and continue cycling through her deck. Next up was Assassin 3. Decided to take a little bit of a different route, again not trying to win the suspect race, and looking at that suspect that I'd left out in front as a potential target for one of Salandra's come through everythings. I decided to go and lift it up myself, turn it into a valuable commodities. Now, Assassin 3 obviously doesn't have his own name, just the serial number in the League of Assassins archives, but I thought I'd be moving everyone as a bunch, so even if he does go down and get beat up, he would hopefully be able to drop it somewhere I could be able to lift. I would see if that pays off later on in the game. Jason Todd activated next. Again, very efficient, even without an audacity marker. Was able to place a suspect right on the perimeter there, again looking to set up another secure the perimeter, and then also move to threaten next turn beside the fountain closer to the wall than he was before. Salandra had a little bit of a stuck hand at this point, decided to use the new resource on valuable commodities, which is actually really, really useful. Kind of costly. It's 2 resource points that allows you to draw 3 cards, which then of course you can choose what discard out of your hand. And as you can see, this is what's left in her hand now. So I activated Damian Wayne at this point. Again, lots of Robins on the board, but my Damian Wayne this time. He had an Audacity marker, but again, that was more just for threat of the mobility of the little guy around the board. I didn't actually need it in this turn. Talia was giving him his Inspire. He took his normal movement action and he popped down a suspect right in front of Ubu, right where the assassin had just picked up the valuable commodities. That actually allowed me to score my 3rd copy of Under Their Noses because it was right across the wall from the suspect beside Donna, bopping me another 2 points. Next, the Titans leader, boss, sorry, in this case, Dick Grayson, the Robin, decided that it was his time to actually get in and sort of rough things up. He had sat back far too much last turn and decided to activate his Batclaw, zipping up all the way along that wall to where you can see right at the turn of it, and looking straight through that chain link fence at the suspect just placed by Robin on the other side. He then used his detective ability because he could see that to reveal it and score Comb Through Everything, netting Salandra 2 points in reverse. I responded with my boss, unfortunately a less impactful activation. Talia is pretty much here for her tricks and her Inspire, so just sort of moved where you can see her, keeping her in sight of the bodyguard and keeping all of the rest of the henchmen within that 8-inch Inspire bubble. More posturing as the fight just sort of started to build up, but no one's actually taken a pop at each other yet. Damien on the Titan side didn't have anything to do on the suspect side, no real cards to score, but just setting up a position for next turn, keeping himself safe enough from potential attack from the likes of Lady Shiva, but also close enough to threaten something next turn. At this point, I decided to take League Acolyte 2, the one with the knives, round the other way to sort of shut off any other angle that Salandra might have to come and attack my suspects. So he took a little bit of a slow roll to it because he didn't want to get immediately singled out and knocked out, placing out another suspect and giving me sort of continue to build towards an eventual score of Eradicate the Order. I did play Confusion from hand as a resource this turn, in order to move Lady Shiva to the other side of the rooftop that she was on, to try and really threaten something this turn with her her element of surprise, I suppose, at this point, because Salandra only had 1 activation left this round. At this point there was some furious measuring as the realization that Lady Shiva was now threatening a couple of Salandra's miniatures from her new position after being pushed forward in that previous activation. Salandra then had to change up her plan for the turn for Wonder Girl and thought she needed to try and at least attempt to take out the threat before it had it go at one of her most important miniatures. So she took Wonder Girl, super jumped to beside the building and then acrobated all the way up it, landed on top of one of my suspects and beside Lady Shiva, used her free Inspire that she got from Dick Grayson to reveal the suspect on the ground, and then proceeded to declare an attack on Lady Shiva. Lady Shiva took a risk because she had, in the Raise the Plan phase, raised her defense through her adaptable ability to 5, that she wasn't going to effort too much because Wonder Girl was attacking with her shield, which does stun damage, so I didn't want to give too much away. So I efforted once, Salandra efforted 3 times in response to try and get as many attack dice as possible. Rolled fairly averagely, and Wonder Girl should normally be hitting quite well, but at this point it didn't spike for her. Unfortunately, the defense 5 allowed me to block everything except for the strength dice, only taking that 1 hit and 2 stun. Pretty much both miniatures sitting on the same amount of stun damage each, which is very frustrating for Salandra at this point. I was also able to score the Ubu character card from hand because there were 4 hits before the defense roll, and I wasn't removed or made KO because of it. Just recalling as well that on Wonder Girl's activation I also played out the Eradicate the Order resource card, making Lady Shiva immune to the smoke effect, just to continue cycling through. Next up, it was the Bow Acolyte, Acolyte 3. the one with the falconry ability. Again, I'd held it back just to wait for something to get close enough that I could fire off some arrows without having to have line of sight, but not to be the case, so I just continued to move him up the board, keeping him sort of at the back, away from any real danger, but potentially to threaten with that bow. I was able to play out the "We Cannot Be Defeated" card as an objective at this point that I had just drawn from the using the Eradicate the Ogre card. Next up, my sidekick Lady Shiva finished off the round, and she again had a late round activation. She just survived a one-on-one onslaught from Wonder Girl and decided it was time to take revenge. Activating her Precise Blow special ability, giving her +1 to hit and allowing strength dice rerolls, as well as her Master Fighter trait on her card, giving her another +1. She was fairly likely to do damage. Salandra did effort once in response, just because that meant that it was still going to take 2 clean hits to actually take her out with a knockout. I efforted, I believe, twice in this case, trying to get the most out of the combo ability. All said and done, I rolled a lot of hits after the combo multiplied them up, leaving Salandra needing a perfect block roll in order to keep standing. Unfortunately, didn't get that. And at this point, I had a very big decision to make, because I had the Lady Shiva card in hand, which could let me score 3 points if I played it as an objective, because I was just about to make Wonder Girl knocked out, which is a model of higher reputation. Or I could use it to actually turn on all 8 stun damage that I was going to do into blood damage, effectively removing Wonder Girl from the game at the end of turn 2. I was worried, and at this point I looked at Salandra's resource points to see if she could cancel a resource card with the Get Them Off the Streets, but she'd spent 2 on those valuable commodities we talked about earlier. So I thought it was better at this point to try and find another opportunity to score the Master's Duel card at a later time and get this big pain in my rear off the board now, because it was quite likely that Wonder Girl was just going to get right back up next turn, be a little bit damaged, but continue the fight nonetheless. So I spent the 1 resource point. That's probably the best 1 resource point I have ever spent, and put 8 blood damage into Wonder Girl, removing her from the table. We both pretty much agreed before the fight went down between those two that it was pretty much a turning point in how at least the early game had gone. And then I brazenly jumped down off the building with Lady Shiva and put her beside the cop car, threatening Salandra for next turn. Quite a bumper turn for both crews in terms of scoring. Thankfully, I rolled a 5 on the multiple threats and not a 6, so I was able to score that. Was a little bit worried when the dice was rolling, because it almost landed on a 6, which would have sort of hampered me in the game. We did have the 2 under the noses scored during the turn. The Yours to Command Ubu card that had scored off that very key defensive block from Lady Shiva, and then the We Cannot Be Defeated card that I'd committed to earlier in the round. Equally 12 points were scored on the Titans crew this turn. We saw the multiple threats played out. There were no suspects damaged or removed, so that scored immediately. We Cannot Be Defeated again. There was a nice little formation of suspects down towards the south end of the board. Snitch that was placed out was again never going to be cancelled this turn. He combed through everything that Dick Grayson had scored during the turn, and finally secured the perimeter that was set up again by those 2 models on the eastern side of the board. Jumping forward to the Raise the Plan phase at the 3rd round, we can see all the audacity and all the scheming has been done. First of all, though, Salandra won the roll-off and she would go first this round. I played out the Die Hard objective card on Damian Wayne, hoping that he would stay alive for the rest of the round. Salandra then put out Audacity on Dick Grayson, Damien, the 3rd, Robin, Jason Todd, and also on Oracle, missing obviously that key activation from the removed Wonder Girl. She then tried to scheme some suspects around to give her the ability to set up yet another Secure the Perimeter, but during my Raise the Plan, again, actually all over the same miniatures, Robin, the Bow Acolyte, the Knife Acolyte, and Lady Shiva, and I sort of counterplayed the scheming to sort of push the suspects away from the board edge, but also towards Salandra's miniatures so that she wouldn't be able to, say for example, place a suspect before she moved. She would have to make space for it. Salandra's first activation this round was Little Damian Wayne. After seeing the loss of Wonder Girl from that rooftop, he was incensed and enraged, decided to do something about it himself. Armed with his handcuffs, he was hoping to remove Lady Shiva from the game, bounded it over just past Dick Grayson, pushing him out of the way almost to get in and swing at the martial artist on the other side. Lady Shiva was looking at the amount of stun damage that Damien could put out and decided not to effort, relying on her adaptable defense 5 that she pushed up in the raise the plan phase. Robin himself efforted as much as possible to try and guarantee this knockout and then hopefully the arrest thereafter. It put through, I believe, 3 hits, but Ubu on the other side of the fence was right there with his bodyguard trait, efforting and taking all that stun damage. At this point, we did knock him out. We did make a wee bit of a mistake because Ubu does have large and therefore should have ignored 1 stun damage from that attack. But we didn't figure that out until turn 4, which we sort of fixed it in turn 4. So he doesn't activate this round, but activates next round. I also took this opportunity just to play out multiple threats from hand, taking the risk that one of my suspects might be removed just to continue moving through my hand because I had far too much crap in it at this point of the turn. Continuing her rampage on the high reputation miniatures in Salandra's crew, Lady Shiva activated next and decided to get past the Little Damian Wayne, who had already activated this turn. He wasn't a threat anymore until next round, and picking on the boss of the crew, Dick Grayson, instead. Dick, well, again, had seen what had happened on that rooftop, didn't effort. Shiva efforted 3 times and put more than enough stun to KO the boss and remove the Inspire rule from play for now. Didn't have anything to score off this one, but it was good to get that extra activation off the table. I also did shuffle through my Eradicate the Order card, using it as a resource to get it out of the hand and pulling what you can see into my hand now. So next up is yet another reaction or reactivation to, I suppose, get revenge and getting a key important miniature off the board. And so Shiva had left herself quite vulnerable with just 1 willpower health left. So Jason Todd decided that it was his time to shine. He moved forward, used his impetuous rule to fire batarangs, multiple extra batarangs at Lady Shiva. Lady Shiva only had 1 willpower health, as I said, so she took at least 1 hit and went down like a sack of potatoes. Jason Todd then played out a suspect through his handyman rule right beside him, and because the crew now had 6 suspects out, Salandra felt safe enough to commit to the multiple threats cards. I did at this point try to use the Talia resource card to protect the suspects that were around me, but Salandra decided that was worth cancelling with a get them off the streets. Talia then decided to take the temperature of the battle down a little bit. Didn't have an elasticity again for the 3rd turn in a row. We just decided at this point it was actually quite safe for her to make her way into the middle of the board and start hopefully allowing me some inspires in the 4th turn to get after the last suspects and reduce Salandra's suspect count. Oracle next up. She actually, again, took the heat out of the battle, was never going to be getting involved in the fight anyway as an intel support character, which moved over to north of Goliath, played out a snitch with her tactical action, and then used her special action to hack both the snitch away north and the sewer that was nearby the opposite direction so that there couldn't be any cancelling of the scoring of that snitch. Next up, I was feeling a little bit more bold after removing 2 key miniatures and the miniatures in the middle of the board all have either been KO or have activated this turn. Took the assassin with the valuable commodities in his pocket and ran him around the corner. He used his Inspire from Talia to pop out a suspect, which I was hoping to use for multiple purposes, potentially shooting an arrow through with the falconry rule, and also just upping my suspect count to try and win and eradicate at some point this game. Next was Goliath, and this is actually the last activation on the Titans because they were a little bit lacking of bodies. He just used his action to place the suspect just below him. At this point, because there was a snitch and the suspect there, they wouldn't be able to be used for secure the perimeter because you cannot use a snitch that was played that turn as a secure the perimeter because it cannot be removed this round. But it was setting it up for next turn and hopefully leaving something that Goliath could leave behind and come back into the fight next round. After trying to set up a situation where I could use the bow acolyte for the last 2 turns, I actually found myself now with a prime suspect. Actually, looking at it, I probably could have shot Jason Todd, but I forgot he doesn't have acrobat. But I decided to try and put poison out because I had the I'm feeling weird card on my hand. I used the suspect that was right in the middle of the board and the falconry special. I didn't spend the suspect, so I didn't get an extra dice, but I did manage to put through 4 blood damage onto Robin, who was KO on the floor, and giving him the poison effect and scoring the card. Back-to-back acolyte activations as the knife acolyte came down the other alleyway to the fight, knowing that there wasn't much risk of anything overshooting him at this point. Had an audacity, as he always had this game, used it in this case to target Damian Wayne with his throwing knives. Damian was already on 3 stun damage, so I was hoping at this point to goad him into acrobating it away from it. He decided that the 1 blood damage that each knife was going to do wasn't worth it, and I only actually managed to hit with the strength dice on this one, doing a single blood damage. I did manage to knock him down because it was a crit, which was fairly key. Fairly busy activation next for the League of Assassins version of Damian. He decided to flip over the chain link fence, not using his backclaw. I still hadn't used it this game. Landed right in front of Jason Todd. Used his detective to remove the suspect that Jason had placed this turn, scoring the Fire Rises card, which is basically revealing a suspect within 6 inches of your friendly boss. At this point, Salander reacted by playing the Comb Through Everything resource, which allowed her to place a suspect marker beside one of her other miniatures. She didn't think she was going to be able to score the Secure the Perimeter this card this turn, as we described earlier, but this gave her an opportunity to pop one down right beside Oracle after some very fine point measuring. Just about found that it was legal and in the right spot. Damian then turned his attention with his actual tactical action to the mirror image of himself, who had just been knocked down by the knife wielding acolyte, and decided that it was time to break out the batarangs, aiming just good enough to knock out little Damian on the other side, again continuing to press home that numbers advantage. Last activation of the round, I could have decided to try and put out a suspect to make it 8 on the board, but Salander already had 8, so it didn't feel worthwhile to me. Instead, I decided to move Gustav beside the now comatose body of Robin Damian and used the pickpocket, very little used trait. I used the manipulate action to use that and effectively look at Salander's hand and ask her to discard 1 card. Of course, I chose the Secure the Perimeter card to discard, so that stopped her scoring it this round. Salandra was first player, and she was able to score the snitch that you placed earlier, and the multiple threats came good at the end of the round. League of Assassins scoring this then, you've got the multiple threats that was all but guaranteed, the Die Hard because Damien was still alive at the end, Do Not Deviate from the Plan scored from hand, and we saw the Fire Rises and I'm Feeling Weird scored. A couple of very key knockout rolls this turn. The Titans actually got both of their guys awake again. That would have been Dick Grayson and little Damian Wayne. Both woke up. Damian just straight rolled a natural 4 on his 2 dice, whereas Dick used the rerolls that he got from being within a certain amount of inches from a couple of teammates to reroll his and get under the 6 that he needed. Shiva didn't wake up with her endurance of 7, and we corrected the mistake that we made about Ubu, as we spoke about earlier. Here we are at the end of the last Raise the Plan phase. We rolled off again the Salandra with a heavy advantage because of all those unused passes. She won the first activation. No cards played from either hand in terms of objectives. The League of Assassins did play out the Talia card again as a resource because it wasn't likely to score as an actual objective this turn. That should protect my suspects, meaning that Salandra would have to remove her own to remove mine. So kind of hoping to try and win that war of suspect attrition. In terms of Audacity, there wasn't much in the way of choice for Salandra. She had 5 minutes left on the board. Just chose Oracle not to get Audacity. Everyone else was hoping to contribute this turn. For me, obviously with Lady Shiva still face down and drooling onto the sidewalk, I had to change my plan a little bit. I placed the Audacity onto the extra one onto Assassin 3. The other 3 still on the 2 Acolytes and Damien this round. In terms of scheming, both of us trying to use the movement of suspects of our opponents to feed our point scoring engine this turn. For me, I was looking to try and make suspects close enough that I could remove and win the suspect war, hopefully score and eradicate the order for the first time. For Salandra, she was looking to set up situations where Dick Grayson or Damian Wayne could use their detective, their tactical action or their inspire action to lift one of the suspects around them in the middle of the board. Quick as a flash, little Damien popped onto his feet, probably kipping up actually, and decided that Gustav, the guy who had just picked his pocket moments ago, had to get gone. Damien swung fairly heavily, and the lowly prisoner was immediately knocked out and zip-tied, arrested, and put probably in the cop car that was right beside, scoring the Get Them Off the Streets card as a opener on the round when it was most important to get an advantage in points. Salandra also then used the Inspire from the now awake but face down Robin beside him to detective off the suspect that was just behind the other side of the chain link fence. Because of the Talia card that had been placed earlier, she had to remove one of her own and actually chose to remove one which was close to my crew, trying to reduce opportunities that I had to actually score removal cards that I might have. So next I had to mirror that activation with my own Damien, and I had to mirror that activation in scoring 3 points. It had set up quite nicely that the only other miniature on the board that I could do stun damage with that was left was little Damien with his batarangs, and he had to be able to knock someone out who was a higher reputation point than him. And guess what? Dick Grayson was sitting on the floor, with prime target. So I popped the second round of batarangs into Dick Grayson, knocked him out. He had no answer to it. Scored the Shiva card, and then moved to where you see him here, near Jason Todd, revealed a suspect, just again to continue attacking the suspects on the board. Salandra then, in response, played a Come Through Everything to pop another suspect back out on the board, which is why you can see one now beside little Damien. The other little Damien, the good little Damien, not the bad little Damien. And then the reason that I placed my Damien there was to try and counteract the impetuous rule from Jason Todd. I had no reason to try and keep Damian Wayne alive at this point. He'd done everything he could. I was just trying to protect the rest of the crew from extra batarangs. The point swings and potential lead swings were coming thick and fast at this point. It was a really, really tight one. We're both nail biting. I think both of us thought the other person had won multiple times through this round. And Jason Todd's activation was one that would really, really set the race alight. So, obviously, correctly identifying that the Assassin 3 had probably overextended himself with those lovely valuable commodities in his back pocket. Wasn't close enough for the batarangs to be using the impetuous, but when Jason Todd chucked them at him, the defense 3 miniature went down like a sack of potatoes with very little resistance. The valuable commodities was placed by me just on top of the car. Probably couldn't, there wasn't anywhere really I could place it that Jason Todd wasn't going to be able to move and pick it up. Salandra then decided to try and turn this 3-point swing into a 5-point swing by jumping over the other side of the car, picking up the valuable commodities as she went, and then standing next to the suspect that she had schemed over there earlier in the round, picking that up with the free handyman trait and scoring Comb Through Everything. So as I said, 5-point swing. She also had to remove one because of Talia's card, removing yet another one from the middle of the board, meaning I couldn't really attack any of the remaining suspects. She then used her last 2 resource points to use the valuable commodities card to try and really mill through her deck to get the cards into her hand that she might be able to score this turn. The now corrected Ubu took his activation next. He was within 8 of Talia, so just moved up beside the Damien Wayne on the Titan side and removed the suspect that had been placed through the comb through everything resource that Salandra had played. I had Eradicate the Order in my hand now, and I really needed to push ahead to get those 3 points this turn. At this point, Goliath activated, and he'd been dropping suspects all game, but at this point he decided that it was time to have a bit of a scrap. He flew all the way over to where you see him in the middle of the board. He couldn't reach any further, so he had to attack Damien. Unfortunately, dropping suspects through the suspect exhaustion event meant that he couldn't reach Talia to try and maybe stop her from doing anything this turn. The already activated Damien had to be the target. So Goliath was then trying to play the very sneaky bluffing game that everyone gets into whenever they have Overdrive in their hand late in the turn, of willing their opponent to effort in defense, but then they would not effort to attack to score the Overdrive card. I was smart to it, probably because I had the card in my hand as well, and I was thinking of trying the same thing. But also, Damien didn't mean anything to me at this point. He activated 4 times. So after all was said and done, Goliath only actually managed to scrape Damien 1 time, because Damien has defense 4 and the combat braces, which allows him to reroll defense. So the nails were bitten and the swings were coming quick and fast, as I said earlier in the turn. Knife Acolyte 2 was the guy I decided to activate after some humming and hawing, because Oracle didn't have an Audacity left, so I was probably just sitting with sort of having to plan out what I could do to try and maximize what I could get out of the rest of the turn. As you see my hand, I pretty much couldn't score the Do Not Deviate, couldn't score the Confusion. I could hope to score the Overdrive here, and also try and recover that loot and Eradicate the Order. So ran over with my Inspire from Talia. I was able to pop down a suspect behind me. Then obviously aimed at attack after popping my Venom Dose that I had equipped the Acolyte with. Jason Todd decided that it would be better not to effort in defense, which gave me free reign, although not scoring the Overdrive card, give me free reign to effort 3 times, 2 times for free, and actually pump through a lot of hits because of the combo knives rule that the Acolyte has. Did literally just 6 damage after blocks were done, which meant that Robin spilled the loot an inch away from himself, leaving it there to be potentially picked up later in the round by one of my guys. Oracle was left as the last Titan to activate. Didn't have Audacity and just used her opportunity to hack suspects away in case I might try and attack them at all. She was just about hanging on 1 health at this point because of all the suspects that I had removed this turn, but couldn't actually achieve anything else on her activation. Securing that valuable bag of loot, Talia, again, without Audacity, the entire game just pops over the hood of the car and picks it up, securing those 3 points for the end of the game. Once again, I'd held the League Acolyte 3 back pretty much the entirety of this round in case the attack from the Knife Acolyte hadn't entirely removed Jason Todd, but at this point all he had to do was move and place himself a suspect in order to just reinforce that winning position of the suspect game. An absolute nail-biting finish to a barn burner of the game, where the leader basically flipped back and forth in that last round. But here's what Salandra scored before we tell you the final score. There's a secure the perimeter that she was able to, again, secure because of the suspects set up the turn before. Get them off the streets from arresting Gustav, the actual prisoner. So, I mean, he goes back to prison. And he combed through everything that was scored, again, from Jason Todd hopping over that other side of the car when he had stolen the loot away from the assassin. On my side, I managed to put away 3 3-pointers this round. None of them were straightforward, though. The valuable commodities, as you saw, was swapped back and forth this round. Probably played it a little bit loose, left it a little bit at risk at times. The Eradicate the Order, again, Probably playing the Talia resource card out helped me score that one, as Salandra was attacking my suspects nonetheless, but it was also reducing her count at the same time, so it allowed me to keep tabs on that. And then the Master's Duel, there was only literally one miniature left on the board that I could effectively score this with and against, but it just happened to be right in the right situation at the right time to score it. So 9 points for the League of Assassins on round 4. So we promised you a tight game, and what you got was an extremely tight game. As you can see here, final score was 41-40. Salandra and I took quite a lot of time in that last turn because it meant so much. Each activation was like a swing of 3 points one way or 5 points another way. It really came down to the wire, and we spent a lot of brain power and energy figuring that out. The game was interesting in the sense of, I'm not a big fan of this deployment type, neither is Salandra, because it really sort of almost counters a lot of things that crews want to do. It did give both of us like the safety to play our suspect game. Salandra's was very strong, obviously getting those snitches out without really any risk of me cancelling them, especially hacking away sewer markers from things, just starting up that big engine of points. You know, we were very polite to each other for pretty much almost 2 rounds, and then just, you know, somebody lit a match and it just started. You know, the numbers started tumbling, the dice started affecting the game, and that's where it got exciting and also very tilting and stressful at the same time. But overall, you know, we were both trying new things out on both sides. I wouldn't say that Lady Shiva is for everyone or for every fight, but she brings a lot. You just have to be wary of, you know, trying to have her knockout henchmen all the time. Might not work all the time. Salandra was trying new things out here, looking to get a different leader out there to give more sort of reputation room to build out the crew to 6 members. Dick Grayson has a lot of tricks that she didn't get round to using because Lady Shiva just, you know, cleared house very quickly at the start of that 3rd round. Goliath, you know, did manage to ferry Jason Tawn to the perimeter, you know, was just a reliable suspect placer. Could have, you know, I mean, I don't think he's really set up to do a ton of damage because he does blood stun with his claws. He is quite hard to break down, but he's also a big target. Then Oracle, who obviously, you know, worked her way over to the side of the board, was never going to really be at risk because of the wall down the middle of me removing enough suspects to take her off the board. You know, had a good game out there. We like to do some non-scientific MVP awards for each crew here. We'll start with Salandra first. So she nominated Oracle for this award. I think she estimated that Oracle probably contributed more than 1/3 of her final 40 points, just from what she was able to bring in terms of her character card, a character objective card. It was ending up playing all the snitches, keeping the snitches safe by moving the stewards around, you know, just keeping the scheming going to help feed more comb through everything's and removals of mine, and keeping her own safe and setting up more and more secure the perimeters. You know, she's 50 points. She's not expensive at all. You can't go up and hit her in the face. But the rest of the crew really did keep my crew off, removing suspects and getting up the board along with that big wall. So she reliably helped the passive scoring of Salandra's crew this time around. For me, on the League of Assassins side, I guess some might expect me to say Lady Shiva as the MVP because she did manage to take out 2 key players. But for me, it's not actually that. I think that I felt like I got a lot out of Damian Wayne this game, even though I didn't really use all of his abilities. I didn't backclaw him at all this game. But his plays in the last 2 rounds were pretty key to scoring enough points and I guess removing enough miniatures at the right time. You know, he was also able to take out Dick Grayson that second time round, score that Master's Duel card. You know, just that efficiency with his Inspire, being a henchman, getting the detective stuff to remove things at range or place things at range. He just really had a top-notch performance in my eyes. Well, that is the end of our battle report, folks. We hope you enjoyed it. We do these every 2 weeks. We have a ton of these already on the channel, so we implore you to go check those out. We also have a lot of different videos on there, from tactics videos in the Lightning Reflexes series, We look at individual top-notch miniatures in the Moment of Glory series, showing you what they can do. We also look at the sculpts that Night Models have done, the lovely sculpts that they've done in the Miniature Spotlight series. And we would ask you folks, if you're still listening at this point, to tell us what you would like us to play against each other next. We used the Wheel of Fortune this time around to pick it. You know, we've done quite a lot of matchups that we're familiar with, so we don't mind if people take us out of our comfort zone and keep asking us to play different things. Maybe even a specific leader you want to see played, or a free agent. You know, tell us what you want. But most of all, please like the video, subscribe to the channel. You know, it helps us know that you're enjoying this, and you know, we're going to keep making this content. Leave us a comment down below if you have a question. Check out the Discord server, the Arkham Rejects, if you want to have a full-on chat with us and the other members of the community over there. Thank you all for watching, and we'll see you next time.